So the reveal trailer for Battlefield 2042 is finally out, and while we are still waiting for the gameplay trailer to come out in a few days now, I decided to deep dive into the reveal trailer to guess what kind of content, features and gameplay experiences we might get in the next Battlefield game. Those in-game engine trailers are obviously scripted and a bit of work goes into the animations and so on, but in general the point is to give you an understanding or an idea of what you can potentially do in the game once released. It also uses many of the game assets and features to generate some of the scenes, and that's why it's not completely irrelevant to look deeper into those trailers while waiting for the gameplay videos. So without further ado, let's get started. So the first map we see is called Breakaway and it's based in Antarctica. And based on the website, this is going to be a very dynamic map where players will be able to use several elements of the game such as fuel tanks to make them explode and generate permanent fires on the map. I can only assume this will become very useful to deny access to specific areas of the map or just to slow your enemies down when defending specific strategic points. I believe we can already see a couple of those fires in the bottom right corner of the screen and another one in the background in the top left corner of the screen next to what appears to be an FOB with hangars and so on. There seems to be a lot of verticality on this map as well, judging by the location of the weather or the radar station, which is right at the top of the mountain, which looks pretty cool. We can see one of the many flying vehicles that we will be able to use in Battlefield 2042, this one based on the Bell Boeing V-22 Osprey, which is a tilt-rotor aircraft capable of vertical and short takeoff as well as landing. Only this one seems to have some advanced engines, as it doesn't seem to have rotors on any of the screenshots I've seen. A few things I like about this screenshot as well is that vehicles generate more visual cues when damaged, and the game potentially has localized damage for vehicles, since we can see this Osprey is smoking quite a lot from just one engine only. We can also see it using flare countermeasures as it's being targeted by a surface-to-air missile, which seems to be too large to be coming from a manpad. This is probably coming from a vehicle, most likely a proper anti-air battery. Yeah, then we can see a pretty cool explosion when the missile hits the Osprey, but it's not dealing enough damage to destroy it mid-air. Instead, it's going to crash on that station. Next, we see the specialists for the very first time in the trailer. So far we know 4 of them: Webster, which is like a typical assault, Maria the medic, Boris the support, and Casper the recon. Weapon-wise, we can already see what appears to be a weapon similar to a DMR HK417 on that specialist in the center, and a rather tactical version of an AK on the specialist on the right side. On to the next screenshot, we can see the Osprey crashing on the station with beautiful particle and destruction effects, most definitely more advanced and more detailed than before, at least in terms of visual quality. We obviously can see that the core structure of the building remains the same, so it's not like we will be able to completely remove entire buildings from the map. Stuff like stairs, access points, pillars, and what defines the core foundation of buildings will most likely remain for gameplay reasons. I would assume this will be even more true for buildings near capture points. Onto the next frame, we can see specialists jumping from the platform of the station and falling down into a free dive. A couple of things I would like to say here is that just like in most games, your weapon just disappears into thin air when doing actions like this. It's not really a big deal at all, and it doesn't impact the gameplay in any way, but I'm just wondering when we will finally see a game as beautiful as Battlefield 2042 that tries to be more realistic with how operators store their weapons. But it's probably a complete nightmare for animators. More importantly, and still based on this screenshot, we can assume that base jumping will be a thing again, just like we had in Battlefield 4, which has always been a fun thing to do and a very convenient feature to have, especially for maps that has a lot of vertical gameplay like this one, or Hourglass, which is a massive city with huge buildings everywhere. While some will decide to use the parachute, it appears that some specialists will have the ability to use wingsuits to glide long enough to reach locations that might be out of reach for other specialists or air vehicles because of enemy defenses. This is probably something that squads assigned to flank enemy positions will find very useful for sure, and this is the kind of stuff that I like to see in a large-scale video game like Battlefield. This is where we can start thinking about all the fun tactics that pre-made squads can use. Moving on to the next screenshot, we can see the map called Kaleidoskop, which is located in South Korea, and this map clearly has a lot of interesting mix between the extreme vertical gameplay and open areas with parks and long streams of water. So a lot of diversity on this map. The skyscrapers are connected with zip lines, which will give players more options to remain on the high ground without having to rely on choppers or use the lift to reach the roof of other buildings. What we also know about this map is that the Levolution will be this giant tornado that we can see at the end of the trailer. Moving on to the next screenshot, we can see a robot dropping from the sky. I can only assume this could be either a vehicle that you can call, or this is going to be the ability of one of the specialists who can deploy one of those and control them remotely. But before talking more about this robot, let's quickly talk about all the things that caught my attention on this screenshot. First, the specialist on the right is carrying an LMG and what appears to be an RPK type. The other thing I found interesting is how the specialist on the right is equipped with a heavy ballistic armor, while the one on the left is just using a plate carrier. So I wonder if this is going to be defined by the role that you take, or the specialist that you take, or if this is going to be something that you can actually tweak freely, just like the rest of your loadout. And depending on the weight or the type of armor you use, it will impact the inertia of your character. I doubt it, because I think that will be making the game a little bit too realistic for the audience that it's targeting. Now back to the robot, we can also see it running pretty fast through the whole of what appears to be a shopping mall maybe. Not only is this little beast very fast, but it is also equipped with a belt-fed LMG on top of it, so that's speed and damage. I can only assume that it won't have a strong resistance to damage for balancing reasons. But I think this robot is going to be slightly more useful than the repair drone that we had in Battlefield 4, and I actually wonder if we can actually modify this robot to have something else instead of an LMG, like a rocket launcher maybe, or a repair tool. Next, moving on to a different place, this map is called Discarded and it takes place in India. This is a ship graveyard where players fight between giant cargo ships while dealing with a giant storm, which will hopefully, if not most likely, limit your visibility on the field. We can see 4 tanks in formation, which makes me think that it will most definitely be easier for players to play with the vehicles and have more vehicles like tanks and cars and whatnot on the map at any given time, given the size of the maps and also the amount of maximum players we will get with this battlefield. We also see a very good example of Levolution where players can open the side of one of the giant cargo ships, which once again not only changes the visual aspects of the map, but it also provides new tactical options with new access points to objective locations. I like that the Levolution is not going to be just about changing how the level looks and so on, but it will also impact the gameplay more than what we had in previous Battlefield games. Quickly after that shot, we could also see a specialist or several specialists running away from the falling part of the ship. And while there isn't much to say about that, beside the fact that obviously you will die if you stay below the falling part, we could see a specialist with a vector type SMG. So we know that this weapon will also be available, which I'm sure will make plenty of people pretty happy given how popular the vector is in most games. Moving on to the next map called Manifest. Based in Singapore, this looks like a container maze with a lot of CQC gameplay. According to the website, players will also have to deal with extreme weather conditions such as tropical tornadoes, just like what we saw in previous maps. Weapon-wise, we can see the DMR that we saw earlier again, but with a different configuration this time, since it looks like it has an MRO type red dot instead of a scope. The specialist on the right side as well also has a macro red dot equipped on what appears to be a shotgun. We can see it better on the other frame, and it looks like it is also equipped with a pretty impressive suppressor. A couple of things worth noting about this map, gameplay-wise, is that it's very dark, and we can already see a couple of specialists using various devices on their helmets that could potentially be NVGs or thermal scopes, We had nighttime operations in Battlefield before, mostly via DLCs and in campaigns that were only dedicated to night operations. But it would be pretty cool to see this kind of gameplay as part of the main game at launch instead of added much later via DLCs, mostly because I think it would work very well with the targeted audience. A day and night cycle will also be pretty interesting in a game like Battlefield, especially given the size of the map, the amount of players we now get, and the very long play sessions we could organize. Moving on to the next screenshot, we can see specialists climbing the containers on the left side, which makes me believe that climbing might be a little bit more advanced than what we had in previous Battlefield games, once again giving players more tactical options when trying to flank or push points. We also get more information about the weapons that we will get in Battlefield 2042, and the specialist on the left has another shotgun that we haven't seen before. This could be either a SPAS 12 or a QBS-9. Attachment wise, we obviously get the tactical flashlight, and the fact that it's switched on in this trailer kinda makes me think that it's really important for you to get in this map with either night visions or a flashlight equipped on your weapon if you want to see something. So I really hope we actually get nighttime operations at release. I think that could be really awesome. Moving on to the next screenshots, we can get a better look at the weapon, and we can see that the specialist is using an OKP7 type reflex sight on his AK, and we can also see that he has a visor on his helmet, while others had either nothing or some sort of goggles on it. Again, I wonder if this is just part of the cosmetics and how you can customize how your specialist looks, or if this actually adds interesting elements to the gameplay, like better protection to your face against headshots at the cost of not being able to use NVGs and having to rely on the flashlight instead. Next, we obviously have the return of the sneak melee attacks that cause instant death, as well as stealing the dog tags of the specialist you just terminated, which was a feature that many people liked in the previous Battlefield games to collect rare dog tags, or just in general to shame snipers who stay on the same spot for the entire game. Also, pay attention to the name of the specialist, since we will see it again later in the trailer, however with a completely different outfit. This also makes me wonder if we will be able to display more dynamic stuff on our outfits, such as our current rank or our player name, which could be pretty cool for super hardcore mods where you have to check the outfit of your teammates to know what call signs to use in the voice chat, because you don't have any user interface and so on. You have to physically look at the outfit of the specialist in your squad. Next, I believe we might be back on Breakaway in Antarctica, and it looks like a completely different map to what we could see at the beginning of the trailer. It's almost like it's two different maps in this game, unless they haven't announced all the maps yet, but they still had this preview in the trailer. But it really, if it's the same map, it really gives you an idea of how large the maps will be to ensure a very smooth transition between the different styles of terrains within the same map. It actually reminds me of Operation Without from the Final Stand DLC for Battlefield 4. So vehicle-wise, those hovercrafts look really cool, very fast, and they seem to be equipped with a remote-controlled LMG on top, which is pretty cool. It also looks big enough to transport at least 4 specialists, which is enough for a full squad to reach the point really quickly in Battlefield 2042, I think. Another thing that really caught my attention are those zip lines that we can see in the right side of the screen, which I will not be surprised is a feature we are going to see on many maps given how large they are in Battlefield 2042. Next, we can see a Ripsaw EV2 type vehicle, which might not be able to transport more than 2 specialists at a time, but hopefully compensate with a stronger firepower, faster speed, and the capacity to drive on terrains that other more conventional vehicles such as bikes and cars and whatnot cannot, like steep hills, rocks and ice. Moving on to the next map called Orbital. Based on the description from the website, it sounds like the evolution might be time-based and kind of force players to do specific stuff before running out of time in order to win. I kind of like the idea of having some sort of conquest mode where the victory conditions aren't just based on the amount of tickets you have left at the end of the game, but more based on whether or not you successfully completed specific objectives before the end of the world. Again, this is a rather dark map due to the fact that there is a storm about to hit this location. We can also see that there is more than one launch site, since we can see at least one, maybe two in the background, which makes me think that there could be more than just one site to protect or attack, given the huge size of the maps we're getting in Battlefield 2042. So that's pretty exciting, unless obviously this is part of the skyboxes and we cannot actually reach those places. Vehicle-wise, we can see a classic Hummer on the far left side, which I assume will have a transport capacity of at least 4 specialists. And once again, we can see those long cables going all the way from the top of the launch site to the far right side, which I believe was a forest in the previous frame. And I'm pretty sure those long cables are zip lines that you will be able to use to get the hell out of the launch site once the rocket takes off. The next map is called Hourglass, and it has this amazing Blade Runner 2049 style, which when thinking about it is only 7 years after Battlefield 2042. So, yay. Are we getting a Blade Runner DLC at some point for this game? It's a giant city with huge buildings in the middle of the desert, surrounded by fine sand and about to get hit by a sandstorm. Then we can see a little bird chased by two K-52 between the buildings until those two K-52 crash into each other as they try to flank the little bird. Those K-52 seemed to be equipped with a typical minigun, rocket pods and air-to-ground anti-tank missiles, unless those are air-to-air missiles, but they don't look like they are. They actually look more like Hellfires, to be honest, but we will hopefully get a confirmation soon. As for the little bird, we can see it equipped with 2 miniguns as well as 2 rocket pods of 12 rockets each, which is a slightly more aggressive loadout compared to what we had in Battlefield 4. Given its small size, speed and firepower, I wouldn't be surprised if this little bird is once again going to be a favorite vehicle for many players out there, and it is going to dominate the battlefield quite a lot. Still focusing on vehicles, jet-wise, we are at least getting a Su-57, as we can see in the right side in the background with the twin engines, and a F-35 type at the front. Typical for Battlefield. Nothing to see here. We can all agree this is the best part of the trailer and by far the most realistic and authentic gameplay I've ever seen in any game, especially a Battlefield game. Yeah. Actually, what we can confirm though is that in terms of rocket launchers, we are getting something similar to an M136-84 rocket launcher. Back to the kaleidoscope map, we can see an AH-64 Apache attack helicopter, and the specialist in the center of the screen is using an SMG type weapon, most likely a UMP with a skeleton stock and a suppressor as well. So this is the first time in the trailer that we actually see one of those major weather events, and that are kind of part of the revolution, I guess. And while we can easily get distracted by this giant tornado, let's just quickly confirm that on top of all the vehicles that we have seen already, we can add this buggy type car, which seems to have a transport capacity of maybe only 2 players, maybe 3 maximum. Shortly after that, we could see Espinosa again, but this time dressed completely different, with a pilot style mask and a heavy ballistic armor, as well as an LMG, which seems to be based on the new variant of the HNK MG4A3 LMG. Right after that, we can see the specialist Maria, which is the medic I believe, running away from the tornado, and weapon wise she seems to be using an FN Scar inspired rifle. It's pretty hard to tell, but given the mag, the color, the general shape of the rifle, beside the handguard, everything looks pretty much like a Scar, which is pretty cool as well. And then at the end, we could see the specialist with the wingsuits using the tornado to lift off, get momentum and fly away from it, which kind of makes me think if you can actually use the tornado to your advantage. Like, let's say you reach locations that are rather far away from you, so you get into the tornado or close to the tornado, spin a couple of times and then just get away from everything using your fancy wingsuits. I also like the fact that the tornado was putting everything towards it. That was pretty cool, and it makes me wonder if driving and flying in extreme weather conditions like this one will be much harder than when the weather is really good. And so that's it for this Battlefield 2042 trailer deep dive and breakdown. I hope you enjoy it. If so, don't forget to leave a like and a comment below to let me know what you are the most excited about. And if you have already pre-ordered Battlefield 2042, I'm still waiting for the gameplay trailers to drop, but I think I will get into it anyway. I'm just not sure which version I want to buy yet. Anyway, thanks again for watching, and I will see you next time.